So, welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So, this is episode 81, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Sparsh Mehta, who's the GM of Marketplace at Belong. So, Belong is a marketplace that's reinventing the way people rent homes and is backed by top funds like Andreessen Horowitz, GGV Capital, and Battery Ventures, to name a few. So, prior to Belong, Sparsh led marketplace growth at Convoy, so he has some really incredible marketplace experience. So this is a really great chat with Sparsh, where we got to learn more about his past experience leading marketplace at Convoy, now at Belong, more on Belong as a home rental marketplace, some unique marketplace insights, and also had a great Q&A for those on the chat. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and know you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Sparsh, welcome to the group chat. It's definitely great to have you join us here today. So this group chat has been a long time in the works, and you have some really incredible experience leading marketplace growth at Convoy and now at Belong, which I'm really excited to learn more about. Before we jump into things, so I think it'd be great if you can start off by sharing a little bit more on your background for those that don't know you.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me. Super excited to just engage in a discussion here with this group. And yeah, my first time doing this, so just share my thoughts, and I'm excited about that. So in terms of my background, I've spent most of my career in and around marketplaces. Really, even before Convoy, it started when I was in college. I worked on a music tech marketplace of sorts that me and my friends were trying to build. It was called Mash Music, where we try to connect aspiring musicians and producers in a sort of fun way. And obviously that didn't work out, but that was sort of my first exposure to tech and marketplaces and what it takes to build one and how challenging it can be, but also like piqued my interest. And then after that, I worked at LinkedIn, where I spent time in their SaaS business and ads business, but also their marketplace businesses. And LinkedIn's sort of an interesting company where really not many people realize it, but you have almost every type of business model that are usually successful in tech in general today within one company. And I got to do sort of like a tour of duty and see them all and really understand those businesses. And again, further explore that interest in marketplaces. And really from there, confirmed sort of my interest in those kinds of businesses. And I'm sure we'll get into that. And took the leap of faith, jumped back into startups and joined Convoy. And that was an incredible ride. I spent 3 years there, joined right after their Series B, and then stayed until the Series E, and just before they made their path to an IPO, but decided to make the change for a variety of reasons, and then switched to Belong. Also, right after this Series B, there seems to be a pattern here in terms of why I keep finding myself, joining those kinds of startups at that stage. But really, that scale-up moment is really exciting to me. And I've been at Belong for about 5 months now, joined as their first general manager. And my role essentially is to launch our first expansion market, which I am doing as we speak, and then build a playbook for us to expand nationwide. So that's sort of what I do today.
That's some really incredible experience. So, going back to Convoy, I'd love to learn a little bit more about Convoy as a marketplace. If you could kind of give us a high-level overview of it, and then maybe mention a little bit, more specifically what you were working on there.
Yeah. So for those that aren't aware, Convoy is a freight tech marketplace, tech-enabled marketplace to move really goods long haul, so semi trucks over the road, right? And focused on that middle mile. So a lot of like interplant moves, right, from plant A to plant B, or from a distribution center to a retail store when there's like a truckload of freight to move. But that's the space we operated in, which is like, $800 billion in the US alone. That figure keeps changing, but like massive number is the point. And a really complex, an old school business, really, and fragmented as well, which makes it really prime for a marketplace, right? You have 90% of truckers that are mom and pop truck shop owners, own 1 to 5 trucks. And then you have just a huge fragmentation of businesses that need to move goods, right? And this was an industry that's really old school and, you know, operated on Excel and sheets and phone calls and relationships, all good things, but like really, you know, really prime for disruption. And I found, as I'm sure all of you have, is when you see that fragmentation in a really like complex and overlooked industry, like for me, that's always like a huge like waving flag, like go do something there. It'll be extremely challenging, but the opportunity will be massive. And that's what Convoy is. And we'd connect basically shippers like, you know, Anheuser-Busch, or even like smaller, you know, e-commerce retailers and the likes, to the trucking capacity on the other side, on the supply side, right? And really that long tail of trucking capacity that otherwise wouldn't get access to all this freight, and build the marketplace to sort of operate that business. So that was Convoy. So I joined on the market. The name changed like 3 times, but their growth team, right? Which was and I joined on that first iteration of the growth team. And really our focus at the time, it was 10 to 15 of us. And our focus was, can we really, this was like one of those, you know, cross-functional growth teams that you hear about from Facebook early days, Uber early days, that kind of growth team where you have a mix of functions and backgrounds and skills that come together to really like incubate, rapidly iterate, and like solve problems for our customers so we can build that next growth opportunity for the business, right? So that's what we did. And we really, every business we have now, we spun up through that small group of 10 to 15 folks who then split off and started leading all those businesses as they scaled up, right? And I focused mostly on new market expansion. So I started with launching new geographies before we were a nationwide network. So I joined pre us being a nationwide network, and then launched the Southeast region, which was one of our major regions yet to be launched. Got that off the ground. And really the model was you go through that 0 to 1 phase, set it up to scale within the organization, and then flip it, right? So that's sort of what I did, and then ensure that it could be part of the core function of the organization, and moved on. The second thing I did was I launched our second truck type. So you have different types of truck types. You have dry vans that are just your normal semi trucks. You have refrigerated trucks, which are like to move frozen goods, ice cream, food, that kind of thing. And you have flatbeds for like construction, all that kind of stuff. So that second truck type, which is the second largest in the market too, launched that for Convoy, got that off the ground again, 0 to 1, flipped it back. And so that was a lot of what I did. And then as you do at startups, I would just get pulled into like helicopter into situations that needed help, really add structure to the chaos and then move on. Like that was a lot of what I did, which I really enjoyed because I'm easily bored, and that just, kept things exciting for me. And then at the very tail end, I was asked to, like, this was interesting. And I don't know how in depth you want to get into it, Mike, but this was like at the start of COVID, we were in an interesting situation at Convoy where we were really exposed to what was to come as COVID hit, right? In that, like, there's 2 types of revenue lines in freight, right? You have contract business where you lock in annual prices and contracts with shippers. Like, I work with Procter & Gamble, lock in a 1-year contract that will do 20,000 loads on all these routes across the country at some fixed price, right? And then you have a dynamic revenue business, which is like really free market, right? Last minute spot auctions to service the freight. And we were 90% contract revenue. And that left us really exposed, because what that meant was our price from the shipper, what they paid us was fixed, while the market was going crazy and the cost from truckers that we were paying out to truckers was going through the roof. So all our contracts were in the red. And, we were potentially on a path to destruction where we would just burn away all our money if we couldn't figure out a solution in the next 6 to 9 months, right? So I was asked to then helicopter into figuring out, okay, how do we grow that dynamic revenue business? Because then it's dynamic on both sides, and we could really help hedge the risk on the contract side and balance our portfolio, which would be good. Like really a risk hedge portfolio, like you think about financial portfolios too, into the future as well, right? You have some fixed commodities and types of assets in your portfolio, and then some more volatile dynamic assets, and it helps hedge the risk. And that's how we were thinking about it. And I led that, and was fortunate enough to have the right team and be successful at the right time, where we grew that business from 10% of our revenue to over 60%. And before I left, I was running the largest business at Convoy, which is just bizarre, and grew it, 2-3x within the year, grew profitability 5x within the year, and thankfully we didn't go out of business. So it was just a much healthier than path for Convoy moving forward, and that was an incredibly challenging but rewarding year as well.
Yeah, certainly. It's incredibly interesting, and it does sound quite challenging. So kind of like looking back though, maybe what were some of the kind of key learnings from your time at Convoy that you've taken with you to Belong?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say there's stepping back, there's a lot. For me, Convoy was like one of those, transformative experiences, like in terms of my personal growth and learning and career trajectory, but also professionally in terms of my understanding of marketplaces and what it takes to build them. But what I'll focus on maybe is I think 2 high-level learnings that really translate and I thought were most helpful. One is what it takes, and they're pretty straightforward. One is what it takes to build a marketplace and get it off the ground, and timely right now with Andrew Chen launching his cold start problem book, but the cold start problem, right? How do you really get the flywheel going to build a successful marketplace business? And we can dive into that, but that was one of the big learnings. And then the second was, how do you scale an operation to support that? Once you've got that flywheel going, right, to support that flywheel and execute effectively. Because what I found, especially in these more operationally complex marketplaces that I've worked in, both at Convoy and Belong, is if you do your job right and get that network effect going, and the flywheel turning, and the marketplace really taking off, right, with that organic growth engine, that growth is often at odds with operations and experience, right? The growth will often come faster than you can scale up your organization to support it. And really a lot of my learnings were how do you get ahead of that and set up an organization to succeed while you see that growth? Because there was times at Convoy, at least 2 times I can recall, where we had to stop growth, literally just turn off the funnel because it was we just couldn't support it, and we didn't have the operations for it, and it would have been miserable disaster if we kept it going. And that happened a couple of times, and it belonged to, and at Convoy is more dramatic because you see step function growth with new contracts. With Belong, it's just more continuous growth, but we're already seeing that challenge of how do you keep up with that growth, right? And I had a lot of good learnings there, so I can dive into both if interesting.
Yeah, that would be great. So
yeah, so for the first one, really getting the marketplace off the ground, and this is super simple, and I'm sure you guys all get it, but I'll just reiterate my learning was it really comes down to figuring out what side of the marketplace turns your flywheel, right? Are you a demand-led marketplace? Are you a supply-led marketplace? Figure that out first. At Convoy, you're a demand-led marketplace. You need shippers before you have any business to give to the truckers, right? If you try to bring on truckers and you have no work for them, they'll never come back. So that was Convoy, and Belong were the opposite. We're a supply-led marketplace, right? You need homes before you can get renters, right? Like you have no homes, renters never come back. So step A is like figure out what turns the marketplace. Are you demand-led? Are you supply-led? And then hyper focus on that segment of the marketplace, right? Like what can you do to get that segment, like cold start that segment and get it off the ground, right? So that when you have that with that, like say, load in hand or home in hand, you can go get the trucker or renter to then get, close the loop, match provide that matching function that marketplaces thrive on, and then get the flywheel turning, right? So that was like my big learning, which is like find what that thing is that turns your flywheel, and then hyper focus on acquiring that segment of the marketplace, right? And nothing else matters. And when you get that right, you'll get a really nice network effect. And as your network grows, the key is to keep doing that and do it more cheaply. And if you can do that, you have a business that really succeeds and thrives, right? And so that was like, again, high level sort of my learning there, and I can give specific examples too. But the second piece of the high level learning there is you need a catalyst to get your flywheel turning more quickly so that you can really over time reduce, like I said, the cost of acquisition and the cost of growing your network, so you have a profitable, successful business. And that's what makes marketplaces so exciting, is because if you have this flywheel that's not only driving growth more rapidly, but more cheaply, you're almost impossible to defeat, right? Like the capital it takes to come and compete with you at that point is just somewhat prohibitive. So that's what makes it really exciting. And then you need to get the cost curve down, you need some sort of catalyst. And what I found in at least the marketplaces that I've operated in is it's often been because these were service-based business, good service and experience, right? Because like NPS sort of being that thing you focus on, right? Or customers, some measure of customer satisfaction. Because if you crack that and do that right for that segment that drives your marketplace, especially, right, you will get this really nice word of mouth engine. And it works both in enterprise, which was Convoy, but also consumer, which is Belong. Obviously much easier with consumer, but you get this right, really nice engine where folks will tell other folks about you. And you get this nicely growing network. And as your network grows, that becomes even easier and easier, right? And if you do that right, like you'll get your cost curve down, you'll get really strong economics and everything I mentioned. So those were like the key learnings there. And at Convoy, for me, really, and this is interesting because one was enterprise, one was consumer. Getting, like, to share a specific example, getting the marketplace off the ground in Convoy was more straightforward to a certain degree, right? Because it's enterprise sales. And until you have a sales force, you're just really calling down every customer you can. You leverage your investors and try to get some freight, get a foot in the door so you can prove your worth and value, and then expand it's like land and expand, right? And then expand your account with those customers. And you can then, based on that, if you're hyper focused again, right? Like say, like what we did at Convoy was really focused on one lane from San Francisco to Seattle and get all the customers that ship that freight, right? And land with each of those customers and then expand with each of them. You'll really then get that flywheel turning in that market, right? And then you can go to the next market from there with those same customers and so on, right? So that's what we did at Convoy, and at Belong. Really, now this is a consumer marketplace, so slightly different. And I had to learn some new things, and really, what gets your flywheel turning or your first set of homes is like you don't have really like an enterprise sales force, but you do have really marketing that drives the engine early on. So you turn on performance marketing, get some leads, you'll get your early adopters, right? And you turn on your referral engines and leverage your networks, right? And I think with those two, you can really start to build a customer base. And then if you, again, focus on that catalyst, which is really great experience with that first set of customers, again, you're off to the races. So that's sort of my learning so far on how to build a marketplace.
Yeah, no, that's really great. So I think we found some highlight clips within that too. So awesome. Yes. So transitioning into Belong though, what led you to join the Belong team?
Yeah, for me, it's and sharing transparently, my goal has always been to go back and try to start a company again. And it's what I started with. It's what I want to get back to. But for a variety of reasons, I decided now was not the time for me. I'm getting married, all these other things. So I wanted to still, make sure I'm scratching that itch and learning everything I can before I'm ready to go do that. And I always had an eye out for, okay, if I ever left Convoy, and I was really happy at Convoy, I had a really great trajectory, ended up, like I mentioned, leading 60% of the business before I left. I had no reason to leave, but I always had at the back of my mind 2 reasons why I'd leave. One is if I find that thing that I want to go build, and I'll go build it. Or 2, if somehow an opportunity came along that better served my learning goals before I went and started a company. And I didn't think that would be possible, but lo and behold, Belong reached out, and they were looking to hire their first GM to lead all their expansion and join the extended leadership team. And on the surface, that sounded interesting and exciting, right? Because I would be joining as a leader at a much like where I joined Convoy, but when I joined Convoy, I was way more junior, right? Didn't have the same level of leadership and influence. But now I'd be joining Belong, a really exciting startup backed by top investors, an incredible leadership team, really early on in a key role that is that will at least play a very important part in the next phase of growth, right? And that was intriguing to me on the surface. So I took the call, and one thing led to another, and really validated a lot of my hypotheses that, one, this is an old school, complex operational marketplace that hasn't been touched, which was sort of my sweet spot after Convoy. That was exciting to me. It was an incredible investor and leadership team, repeat founders. When I spoke to them, like Ale, our CEO and founder, was the first EIR Andreessen Horowitz has ever taken on, despite him losing $100 million in his last startup. So that was like signal, like he lost a bunch of money for a bunch of really good investors, and they decided to back him again. And that was, and a repeat founder who's learned from their mistakes, and a repeat founding team, which I thought was really exciting and a good, mentor to learn from. And then the third piece was really the mission and the problem space they were going after. It's one we can all relate with. We all hate our landlords, whether you're a homeowner or you're a renter. Belong's really trying to flip that on its head. And then lastly, it was like the role was the right role, like I mentioned, for my learning goals. So all of that really like came together and convinced me that I should take this leap of faith. And it's been awesome since.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I was doing some research prior to the chat, and then it looks like you're taking a very end-to-end approach, with Belong as a marketplace. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about it. How some of those different, I would say, like unique aspects of it as a marketplace, and then you did mention some of the operational complexities with it too. So if we could kind of jump into that.
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. We're unique, I think, in that we really. And this confused me at the first, but really take a full stack approach to what we do, which is really in the simplest terms, like tech-enabled property management, right? We manage homes for homeowners, and we target mostly single-family homes, what we call absentee landlords. So folks that own 1 or 2 homes, either inherited the home or their first home they bought and now are buying a second home, but really don't want to be a landlord, right? Like they have full-time jobs, likely work in tech or like some other job, right? And don't want to be landlords. So our promise to them is, hey, we'll manage your home, give you guaranteed rent payments, place the most qualified residents possible in your home, and you never have to worry about it. You get guaranteed cash flow, right? Like, give us the keys, we take over, we operate your home, it'll be taken care of, you get money. And on the flip side for renters is, once we place renters in the home, we want to be the operating system for their life in the home, right? And what that means is we have a concierge, and quote unquote, because basically effectively your landlord, but called a concierge because we focus on hospitality and experience as opposed to just the misaligned incentives that usually exist, who's really there to take care of you, right? Which is like anything you need, like whether it's repairs, upgrades, cleaning, your next bartender for a party you're hosting, right? Like the concierge can help and get it done. So that's high level sort of what we do. And then we collect rent payments, of course. But what makes it unique, and why I said we do take a full stack approach, is we really do everything to get the home ready to rent, and then two, manage the home. So the first part being getting the home ready to rent, we have a full-time staff, and this is what surprised me, of technicians. So on my team, I have a general contractor, an inspector, handyman, specialized trades for like electricians and so on, like really like construction people, right? That we hire full-time that most other marketplaces would just sub out or use a vendor network, because we really want to control that experience end to end. And when you have, and control quality, right? We're focused on hospitality, a good experience and quality. And you can only do that when you bring that in-house and own it end to end, right? And you can provide like next day repairs for your home, high quality and highly vetted repairs for your home, and really take care of it. And then from a belong perspective and a business perspective, really utilize those resources as effectively as possible to bring that cost curve down as well, right? So that's where it's really interesting, where we'll take on a home, do all the repairs that it takes to get the home ready to rent, right? And do the cleaning, do the photos, list the home in its best light, and then manage the home. But then again, on the flip side, we still have that full-time staff, construction folks that help with in-house maintenance and upgrades and so on, right? So that was a mouthful, but that's sort of what we do. And I think what makes it, to really specifically address your question, Mike, what makes it unique is we brought everything in-house. And when I was first interviewing, that just ran counter to everything I, learned building marketplaces and building tech businesses, which is like be asset light, be like resource light. But once you spend time in the business, you realize why it makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially the approach, kind of being like full stack, as you mentioned. So on that note too, what is the team like and the kind of the org structure?
Yeah, so for the team and org structure, it's really interesting. So it's evolving, I would say, rapidly changing. And what I tell you today may be very different very soon. But we do have a functional structure for the most part. And what that means is we have our growth and sales team, right? And a leader for that. We have a product and eng teams. We have our operations teams and our experience teams, right? And then the other supporting teams like finance and so on. But we also have layered on for new markets and really anything beyond our core market, this GM structure now, which is why I've been brought on, where I sort of come in and centrally run a lot of those functions. But we also have the functional leaders. So it's sort of a matrixed organization where in my market, all those functions report to me and support the growth of this market, right? But they also have their functional reporting lines because obviously I don't know what it takes to develop and grow the best operations associate and the best sales associate and the best customer service associate and so on, right? So that's sort of like that matrix structure we have now. And we'll see. Our goal right now is as we launch a ton of new markets next year, we will likely extend that structure because it's been working. But at some point that will change again, but that's the structure today.
Awesome. Yeah. And I guess for some context, how many markets do you currently operate in? And then, maybe, what's like that new market launch playbook going to be like?
Yeah, so we currently operate in, and it depends what lens you take on market, but I'd say zooming all the way out, two states, California and Washington, right? And Washington, I live in Seattle, I'm based in Seattle, and Washington is the state that I launched. And then California was the first market that sort of the founding team built as they grew the company, right? And in California, we service the Bay Area, LA and OC, and San Diego. So the way, based on how you look at it, 2 or 4 markets is what we support right now, mostly on the West Coast.
Got it. Got it. And then, yeah, what is that? So what is that new market launch playbook like?
Great. Yeah. My CEO is asking me the same question. The answer is we're building it. My job is to build that playbook before our next launch. So actually, I'm very actively working on that this week. And it's really putting together a lot of my learnings over the past 5 months, launching our first new market. So the short answer is like, we're building it. And we hope to launch our next new market, which is going to be Miami. I guess, hopefully I can share that, in March, right? So preparing for that launch, I'm sort of building the playbook. But to give you, some of the high level learnings, at least, that will go into that marketplace, right? It's really thinking about it. The goal, if I zoom out, actually, the goal being, how do we ensure that we can launch every new market as efficiently as possible, with the least amount of resources required as possible, and with a faster payback period than every market before it, right? Like, that is sort of the mandate. And thinking through it from that lens, it's really thinking about, okay, what were the highest, on one hand, what were the highest resource leverage hires that I had, right? That when I brought them on board, they had the most amount of impact in terms of a function that helped accelerate our growth in this new market, right? And can we pull forward those hires so that the market is equipped to launch successfully? Because when, maybe we get into this, but when I launched the first new market in Belong, because there was no playbook, it was just me out here running around in the wild, and I was like, touring every new home and assisting with handy repairs that I've never done in my life, right? And meeting every homeowner and hopping on every sales call and like doing the things, the unscalable things to scale, that hopefully every new market with the mandate that I mentioned doesn't need to do moving forward, right? So it's really thinking about like, okay, what elements of those were most value add for me to actually own it and while launching, and actually could still be valuable for the next set of GMs. But also then, where can we take away some of the burden where it was potentially unnecessary for me to spend time, after the first set of homes, touring every single home every day, right? And then, bring on the right hires so that we can set up that market for success. So people is a big piece of it, right? And thinking through that. And then the second piece, I think really big piece of it is, like we talked about again, right? Like, how do you cold start the marketplace? And how do you get that side of the marketplace that is going to turn the flywheel? And for Belong, it is the supply side and the homeowners to come on as quickly as possible and get that network turning as quickly as possible, right? And it's really laying out what tactics at least worked really well for me in cold starting that marketplace, right? And ensuring that the next set of markets are equipped and ready to go from day one, to go at least execute what we know already works. And then obviously they can build and expand on that and take that local lens, right? But at least set them up for success in that sense. And like we talked about, the 2 big elements there are, how do we bring on homeowners as quickly as possible? And then how do we provide such a great experience that organic word of mouth engine that will accelerate the flywheel and bring down the cost curve, it starts turning day one, right? So that was the second piece. And then the last piece really is like, how do we, and this is just the more obvious stuff, localize the product so that we can actually legally and through our product, even from an experience standpoint, service that market, right? So there's a lot of very localized rental regulations that you have to get on board with, get the right licenses, make sure your operations are set up to support them and adapt to support them. And then also the product, right? Ensuring that you have all the, like for us, agreements, leases, localized to the region, to the laws for that region. The experience, so when you come on, you can see homes in that region, that kind of thing. So I'd say those are the three big buckets: the people, really the flywheel turning mechanics, and then product and legal, and really like the launch success pieces.
I'd be really interested to learn more about, how, like, what are some metrics or kind of like KPIs that you look at in some of the markets to kind of measure what a healthy market looks like?
Yeah. So the number that this just two things that are top priority, right? Ultimately, as GMs, we own the P&L and everything's a priority. But the two things that are most important in the early stages of launch, and I'll put it in terms that are relevant to the marketplace I'm leading right now, is listings, which is really a representation of network growth. So if we were to generalize, it's really focused on, okay, again, how do you grow that side of the network that drives the marketplace? It keeps coming back to that. For us, it's listings, right? Bringing homeowners on board and listing their homes. Then they're officially in our network, unlikely to back out, and that gets our flywheel turning. So listings is the number one goal. And then number two is NPS, which is, and really goes neck and neck, but like, how do we service those homeowners that we bring on so well that they want to recommend us to every single homeowner they know, right? And every single person they know. And that's how you would really accelerate that flywheel. That's what will be the catalyst. And like we've talked about several times now, bring down the cost curve, which is incredibly important, right? To build a flywheel that's not only turning and growing your business, but also doing it more profitably with each turn. So those are the two main metrics.
Man, I have so many different questions. I feel like you and I could go on for quite some time, and I didn't even get to all my notes over here. But we have some questions, so I definitely want to make sure we can get to those. Hey, Davey, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. Sparsh, this is amazing. I have also a lot of questions. This is more regarding the business model, so I just want to make sure I understand. And can you break it down a bit more, the organization of the structure? Because from what I understood, you have on one side, you have tenants, you have homeowners, and you also have all those technicians. They go in the house to fix everything. So it seems like your marketplace has such a big challenge, which is because everything is so local. Do you have to structure a team in every city where you have a house? And like the scalability of this business model seems like so hard.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit more insight on this, and how can you plan to expand so quick if you have to hire so many people at once when you want to launch a new city or a new state?
That's why he's on the team and leading it, right?
Yeah. No, but that's a really great question, because I had the same question when I was interviewing, which is like, how are we going to scale this thing? This seems insane, right? Because it's really like three sides to the marketplace, right? Because we have a marketplace of pros and technicians, effectively, right? But also the homeowners and the renters. And there's three different sort of like wheels turning that all sort of support each other and turn each other. It's like a cog of wheels, but it's really complex. And to your point, like, yes, we do need a presence in every market that we operate in. And because we're taking such a full stack approach, right? Like, yeah, we have to hire a construction team in every market, right? And there are teams that can support centrally, like sales and experience and operations, but at least the construction team, like, you need boots on the ground, right? And your operation, like your field operations teams, you need boots on the ground. And your GM, you likely need on the ground, because this is a very delicate market, right? Where if you think about it, on the one hand, you're working with homeowners that are handing you likely their most expensive asset. And on the other hand, you're working with renters that are working with you for likely their most expensive expense any given month, which is rent, right? like single most expensive expense. So on both sides, they care a lot. And you need people here that can actually meet them and build those relationships, because I've learned it matters a lot, right? So all that to say, you're right. It's hard to scale, right? And where we really add value is two areas, right? And this is how we can still grow in a hyper growth fashion. One is really using technology to get more leverage out of your people, right? And this is sort of, if you think about a lot of these operationally complex marketplaces like Convoy, but even a lot of the other real estate players like Open Door and so on, right? Compass, where they add value is by using technology almost to build internal tools so that each individual, right, can manage more homes. For example, to give you a specific example, right? Like here, where, you know, the normal technician or operations associate or concierge, as we call it, let's take the example of concierge, who is a landlord, typically can manage, you know, 4 to 5 homes. Ours can manage 60 to 70 homes, right? So it's really like building the tooling and infrastructure so they can do way more with smart insights and project management tools, essentially, so they can do more and scale more effectively per individual. So if you do that, you already outcompete every other competitor that is taking that more traditional non-tech approach and are in a really good state to then keep expanding, right, to new markets, new business lines, and so on, because your economics will be better than everyone else's. So that's one piece, right? Using technology to get better economics that then you can reinvest. And then the second piece is the reinvestment piece, right? Like layering on services, because ultimately the marketplace is our foot in the door to build a network with homeowners and renters and be that operating system for homes. But that's not where we're going to stop, right? Then you layer on highly scalable services to keep servicing the needs of both those segments. And to give you an example, one of them that we could consider is like homeowners and renters insurance, right? Like it's the perfect wedge where to work with us, homeowner needs insurance, renter needs insurance. Today, they're going out to the market. What if we could provide insurance to both parties within our product, right? Underwrite it because we have more information on these homeowners and renters, and then layer on that those kinds of software, more scalable services that will scale with our network, right? And what makes that really powerful too is you now have this captive network that you can keep sending or layering on low cost of acquisition services to, right? Because like for insurance, for example, they're in our network, they need insurance. We're just going to offer it to them. There's really no cost of acquisition. And you have a high margin software product that you've layered on, right? And then you keep layering on the next thing and the next thing and so on. Once you're the operating system of that home and own that network, the possibilities are endless. So that's how you then, you know, continue that hyper growth.
Okay, get it. Thanks a lot. And just a question regarding the business model. So how does Belong make money today? Is it on the rent? Do you have like a flat fee as well? So because you have a lot to cover, because you need to make so many hirings, like you still have to make a lot of money to cover all those hirings and then make profit on top. How does it work?
Yeah, so we have like property management, we have a placement fee and a management fee. Placement fee is 50% of 1 month's rent, roughly, to put your home on the market and find a renter. And then a monthly recurring, and this is where it gets interesting from a business model standpoint, a recurring fee, which sounds fancy, but it's just rent and a management fee on the rent, right? So we take like anywhere from 5 to 10% of rent, but that's really powerful because if you think about rental values, right? And on the net, if you add up our placement fee, our recurring rental fee, and our repair fees, which usually homeowners expect to pay 1% of their home value in repair fees per year to just maintain their home, right? We're netting even today anywhere from 30 to 40% of total rent value as revenue for ourselves, and then have healthy margins on that. So it like the numbers are so big that it covers our costs. And the structure is sort of that more traditional property management fee structure, although we just have less fees. Like in property management, you have like 10 fees if you've ever rented out your home. And there's a fee for like an inspection, and there's a fee for photo, and like they keep layering on fees. We just have it simplified: placement fee, management fee. That's all you do.
Thanks a lot. Amazing.
Those are great questions. And yeah, super interesting to hear how you guys are layering on services to eventually kind of build up to being the operating system.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Daniel, do you want to jump on?
Sure. I actually I started with one question. Now I have two. Belong is what I have most interest in, and you're asset heavy. We're asset light, and we take 10% commission. So I work with coliving.com. It's an online marketplace in about 100 markets, 100 cities. We have 900 properties. So we take 10%. And if you more or less take the same, like why we were thinking of doing more asset heavy. I understand the control bit, but if you just earn the same amount, what's the reasons for doing asset heavy or managed compared to what we do if you earn the same?
Yeah, and it comes down to, I think, really like the core of what our business is and what our mission is, right? And it's to bring like hospitality to an industry that previously has never seen that, right? Like property management and rental management is like a business and industry traditionally wrought with bad experiences, and like NPS, for example, which is a measure of that in that industry, is like negative 10 or 20. Like everyone who has had any experience with landlords, likely it has not been the best experience, right? At least, at the very least, it's not hospitable, right? And our whole hypothesis here is if we bring like a hospitality led touch to this industry, especially keeping in mind the segments we're working on, right? Which is like that homeowner that either inherited the home or it's their first home that they bought that they're now going to rent out. They care a lot, right? And then on the renter side, like I mentioned, do care a lot because they're paying, you know, on average $3,500 per month on rent. The only way this business works is if we provide high quality and experience and really good experience. It's the only way we can at least turn the industry on its head and dominate and really win this business, right? So it all stems from that. And then if you think about that, well, the only way to provide a really high quality service is if we brought some of those elements in-house and did it full stack, right? Because that's a trade-off you make where when you can control the experience, it's more costly, but it's higher quality. And that's the only way we think we can make this business work and actually make it be like a multi-billion-dollar business, right? And that will grow like with tech-like economics versus a business that is just like a matching marketplace, right? Or something different that is not what we're trying to do. So that's why it's just like it stems from sort of what the problem we're trying to solve. When we think about that, it's the only way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. The other question I had was which kind of tech or SaaS tools are you using for marketing, customer service, tenant screening, and stuff like that? Are you doing all in-house or are you using external services?
Yeah, so for yes to all of the above, right? We use like Zendesk and tools like that. We also have some internal tools built out for our customer service and sales teams, right? And then for like tenant screening, things like that, we have really high qualification standards. So we do like a background check, an income verification, a credit check. We do landlord interview, resident interview. So besides the two interviews, really, we have API integrations for everything else. So we can integrate with your bank, we can integrate with the credit checking services, background checking services, so on. So it's all automated. And again, that's how you get leverage out of your people, like we talked about before, right? So each leasing specialist can manage way more homes than like the traditional manual leasing specialist that has to go through everything manually.
Thank you.
Awesome. Those are good questions. Cool. I think we have time for one more question. And I think you already know John, right? Familiar face.
Yeah, John and I, we were LinkedIn together, started our careers together. So yeah, awesome to see John.
Sparsh is in the I think 1 or 2 years above me, and set a very high bar. Made us all look bad when we joined. It's good to see you, man. So my question is around launching new markets. I joined right as you were kind of talking about building this playbook. One of the things that we're thinking a lot about right now is category expansion. We're coaching marketplace. We focused on one specific coaching vertical to start, but we're laying the groundwork to go launch several new coaching verticals. I think coaching is definitely less complex than what you guys are doing in launching new verticals. But my question is around like, how have you guys thought about building a product or an offering that is like highly opinionated, where you basically say, we only service this market, versus like letting the market kind of tell you or pull you in certain directions, and like, listen to what customers are saying and listen to what, renters are saying or homeowners are saying. Because I think like, I don't want to constrain. I don't want to like act like I know what's best, but I also know that like opening the floodgates to every category under the sun or every, a bunch of new markets can be a huge distraction and really costly. So I'm just curious how you guys have thought about that as you've launched new categories, you're preparing to launch new markets.
Yeah, no, that's super. Like, I keep battling with that question, and the reason for that is, like at Convoy, and I led expansion at Convoy, new markets. We talked about that before you hopped on. And there, my job was this, right? Like, what is that next new business, that next new market we should service? Go and launch it. And I was incentivized to go and find new things. But I think I learned the hard way that like often doing less is more. Right. And while my incentives and my interests lay in like, okay, let's keep adding on businesses, right? Because that's what was fun for me. And I was early in my career. Well, a couple of them didn't work out. And then I learned, sort of the hard way that focus, I guess to start with, you have two constrained resources, right? Like time being a very big one, and then capital being the other. And with those two constraints, right, like, focus is the only thing that can drive, I think, like real value in terms of growth, right? Like, given the choice of focusing on your core market and serving that segment really well, and it could mean new services for that segment over time if you've cracked the core thing, right? But still focused on that segment, because then you have to do less new things to add that next new thing. Right. So less time and less capital, again, given those other constraints. That is way more powerful than going and trying to serve a new segment, which sounds exciting and fun. And you can add big TAM numbers and all that good stuff that you can tell investors about. But like, it's a recipe for disaster if you do it too soon. I think you can do that once you have your core business really printing cash and in a place, or at least on the path to that, where it's clear, okay, this business is on its way, is going to print money. Let's go find that next new segment, right? So I'd say focus from the standpoint of like, find the segment you're going to service, find one thing you're going to service that segment with, do that really well and get that network growing. And as you do, it'll be really easy then to add new, like we talked about the insurance example at Belong, right? Add the next new thing, but servicing that same segment, right? And then you can start to do that. But I would really caution against finding a new segment. I've done that a couple of times at Convoy, failed miserably. Could just be that I messed it up, but I think I've learned, even talking to others, it doesn't work.
Super helpful. Thanks, Sparsh.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Always a question that comes up about constraints for marketplaces. So. Cool. We're almost out of time here, but this is a really incredible chat. So thanks for taking time to join us. I have one last question for you. So you have some pretty incredible experience. So, if you could go back to right before you joined Convoy, what would you tell yourself about marketplaces?
Oh, I would tell myself it would be way harder than I ever thought it would be, and way more complex than anything else in the world. I wish sometimes I just did SaaS. That sounds easy. But it's what makes it fun. It's what makes it interesting. But I think you tweeted, Mike, and I saw that, like, you want to humble yourself, start a marketplace. Like I think that rung very true to me and my experience. Like it's incredibly challenging, and it's because it's really depending on the marketplace, but really operationally complex. It's where technology in the real world comes together often, and the dynamics of two sides to the marketplace sometimes more, and that cold start problem, and really getting a flywheel going. While it makes for a potentially massive business, it also makes for probably the most challenging ride to get there. So that's what I would tell myself, like, brace yourself for the ride, because it's going to be crazy, and it has been. But I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Yeah, we can certainly relate. So, well, this is really fun, and it sounds like at some point we're gonna have you join us here as a founder too. So
yeah, one day, that's the goal.
Yeah.
I'll follow in John's footsteps here.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. I really enjoyed this chat. So this was a really fun one too. So I appreciate taking the time to join us and share all of your awesome experience and insights with us.
Awesome.
And, I forgot one last thing. We can't leave. So where can we keep up with you? We got to get a quick plug in.
Oh, great. Yeah. One first plug-in, if you want to rent a home or manage a home, or want management, please reach out to me. But if you want to just keep up with me, LinkedIn and Twitter, the LinkedIn is Sparsh Mehta, and Twitter is Sparsh Mehta 19. Yeah, you can find me in both.
Perfect. I'll include links in the recording for this. So cool. Awesome. Well,
thank you.
Thanks again, Sparsh, and thanks everyone else for joining in.